Welcome, everyone. This is Deborah Tavares with StopTheCrime.net on the Pure Momentum Network. And we're going to have a very important program today. We're going to be talking about a newly released video, and it's entitled, Is AI Now in Charge? So you can now go on to YouTube, type in, Is AI Now in Charge? And of course that stands for Artificial Intelligence. Now, I spoke with Ron Angell, and he and I put this YouTube together with documents. And we're going to be talking about it on today's Pure Momentum Network show in the first hour and get into further detail in the second hour. So I'm going to ask everybody to sign in, become a Pure Momentum Network subscriber to get further detailed information in the second hour. Again, this is Deborah Tavares with StopTheCrime.net. And before I introduce today's guest, I want to point out that certainly our reality is such that we do not have a representative government. And I'm going to suggest that everyone go to Stop the Crime on the USA Inc. link and read The Great American Adventure, Secrets of America by retired Judge Dale. There are many other source documents. Senate Report 93549 talks about the fact that as long as we're under an annually extended national state of emergency, the Constitution has been abolished. And it's extremely important to have a foundation of our reality. So as you hear us talk about these unleashed weapons of a silent weapons system, you'll understand how this happened. So again, Senate Report 93549 clearly states that in order to maintain a dictatorial control and authorization of the many divisions of corporate agencies of the executive branch, the sitting president must formally declare a national state of emergency every single year. And this has been ongoing since 1933, according to Senate Report 93549. And it's important to understand that once the emergency is declared, common law is abolished, the Constitution is abolished, and we fall under the absolute will of government, which they call public policy, and it's corporate policy. And we're under a system of corporate policy, statutory laws. And all this corporate system needs to continue in its existence is to have public opinion on their side. And if public opinion can be kept, they tell us, in sufficient degrees on the side of this de facto government, the statutes, laws, and regulations and executive orders can continue to be passed, and the Constitution has no meaning. And again, the Constitution is suspended, and it has been for 80-plus years. So what is so important to understand, and many people, of course, realize that everything is coming through the executive branch. We have the National Defense Authorization Act, again, allowing Americans to be arrested by our military on American soil without warrant or without provocation and held indefinitely. This is obviously showing you that you are the enemy. Then we look at the Silent Weapons Quiet Wars document, and that clearly declares that war has been declared upon the global population. And they're using a silent weapons system where people will consciously be aware that something is terribly wrong, but they will not understand that they are being subdued by a silent weapons system. And this is what we're going to discuss today on the program, is what is the vast aspects of this silent weapons system. And of course, all of you listening understand that we're being sprayed overhead with chemtrails, with all kinds of toxins, poisons, viruses, etc. We have toxins, neurotoxins added to our water supply. They're forcing GMOs on us. We have to read the labels as best possible on anything we purchase in the stores because of aspartame and high fructose corn syrup, and the list is extensive. All the vaccinations are, of course, laced with poisons and viruses, and people are not asking the right question in general. When we are being assaulted in these ways with fluoride in the water supply, etc., the next question, of course, needs to be, do we have a representative government? Why are people still talking about elections? Why are they still putting all their time and energy in the illusion, in the matrix, that all it takes is a few newly elected legislators to change all of this? No, we're well beyond that. We have to wake up. We have to look at our reality. We do have methods of which we cannot consent. I'm going to tell you that now because when we break into my introduction of our guest, we will not be talking about the climate action plans. But again, I will reference stopthecrime.net, the climate action plan link, and take a look at the employee government questionnaire. This is one way in which you do not give your consent, because much of what we face now is essentially beyond our consent, but we do need to understand how we can create as much wellness for ourselves as possible. So, again, Silent Weapons, Quiet Wars, war has been declared. We are the enemy. We are on a battlefield, and you can verify all of this. So at this point, I'm now going to introduce my guest, Ron Angell. And Ron has been a human rights investigator from the age of 18. And he's always been curious about why the city of Detroit, Michigan, fell into decay. And it's important to understand he comes from an educational background. He has a Bachelor of Science and in Civil Engineering and a degree in Civil Engineering from the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor. And he transferred into physics as a major and then was told he would have to pursue a career with the U.S. Department of Defense for his knowledge and research into superimposed signals over household wiring and other signals over wiring. This is a very important topic because this is what has occurred. But he worked also with victims that have been involved in directed energy torture and microwave and organized gang stalking, where they send in ground teams to harass, humiliate, and traumatize victims. We have definitely entered into a new war where they're using GPS tracking and infrared brain patterning and advanced supercomputers. So with having introed our program today in this fashion, Ron, I invite you to step in and let's talk about first the new video that we just launched, Is AI Now in Charge, on YouTube, and how that was based.
Mm-hmm. Well, I want to thank you very much for having me on your show today, Deborah. And the AI, artificial intelligence, has slowly risen since the chess matches of Bobby Fischer. If you remember, Bobby Fischer played the supercomputer Big Blue made by IBM, and there was a turning point in humanity where humans lost to the machine, to the very creations of the mind of man. We empowered and gave greater brain power to supercomputers. And that was in the mid-90s. Now, we've had doubling of processor speed every year after that. I believe for my research, we are now at a processing speed of a 1 with 25 zeros after it per second. The human brain, Einstein at best, would be 300 cycles a second. So we pale in comparison to the brain power of these supercomputers that they've employed. And the history of this artificial intelligence goes back. It has a history. It was first called the Incapacitac in Maryland, whereby they could only monitor and do this to one person at a time. Later, it was called the God Machine. They were able to use cult-like religions to put in, using microwave hearing, what people believed was the voice of God. And they played around with this quite extensively as you see these cult religions rise and fall. The Moonies in California, the Hale-Bopp Comet people. They were experimenting what they could get people to do. The Guyana cult in French Guyana, the Jim Jones cult that killed themselves in French Guyana, and then the senators that flew out to rescue those cult members that also were assaulted. All these operations were carried out by CIA operatives, seeing how they could get people to put their money into different facets and reorganize the wealth. Very similar to fascism. What we're seeing now is a complete lack of any sort of moral focus. And we're seeing the rise of events in our media where football and sporting events take the place of actual thought-driven human activities such as civil rights and constitutional rights. What I would like to say is we have two very powerful U.S. federal laws put in place, and I'm going to give you those two names of these federal laws that give us the rights to continue as we are doing. And these are found on the U.S. Department of Justice web pages. These are found on the the FBI web page. These are found on different government websites. And these federal laws supersede and protect everybody. And this one of the laws, Title 18 U.S. Code 241, Conspiracy Against Right. If two or more persons conspire to injure, oppress, threaten, or intimidate any person in any state, territory, commonwealth, possession, or district in the free exercise and enjoyment of any right or privilege secured to him or her by the Constitution or laws of the U.S., or because of having so exercised the same, or if two or more persons go in disguise on the highway or on the premises of another with intent to prevent or hinder his or her free exercise or enjoyment of any right or privilege so secured, they shall be fined under Title 18, Section 241, or imprisoned not more than 10 years or both.
Now, the problem Ron, the problem that many people, of course, are having with the idea that we have any kind of protectionary laws now that serve the people is the fact that, of course, incrementally over a very long period of time, our judicial system has literally been taken over, and it's only functioning for the benefit of the corporate system. And, of course, we realize that the corporate charters of this corporate system do not recognize life. They do not recognize living human anything or living human animals. Whatever is alive is not recognized. And that's what was clearly stated in the Silent Weapons Quiet Wars document. Sure. And it says that as soon as the system which has leached off of us and put up with us, and they've gained enough power where they don't need us anymore, they will devour us. So what I believe is really important for people to understand is that at this point, we have to understand the level of the silent weapons assaults upon us. There is no, sadly, there's no saving apparatus that will function on our behalf other than we have to define who we are. We must live in right conduct. We must inform people of the types of weapons that they're going to be presented with so that they'll understand that this new type of warfare is not going to result in bodies being blown apart and visual traumas and realities of a battle with explosives. This is a silent weapons system using frequencies. And we know, too, Ron, that Congressman Kucinich put forth in the early 2000s a resolution before Congress to not fund the geoengineering or the chemtrailing program any longer. That resolution went nowhere. And we also know that most recently, within the last couple of years, Congressman Sessions was talking to Panetta about going into war overseas and was saying, well, when are you going to contact Congress and get us to fund this or make a decision that this is what we want to do? And, of course, he was told that they've already gotten permission from NATO, and they'll let Congress know when they're going to go to war. So I don't think we need any more evidence that we do not have a functioning system. We have an extremely predatory system that does not recognize life. And what I see happening, Ron, and I think you would agree, that we have people in the illusion that we've got some apparatus set up for us at this point, and we really don't. We have that matrix illusion that there is. And so what I'm really interested in doing is letting people understand the types of assaults through these systems, because we're going to have a lot of wounded, assaulted people coming in off this battlefield called Earth that are wounded, but it's not visual, such as people that are talking about being burned with microwaves, being assaulted with hearing voices in their head, being so tortured that they can't sleep, and followed and harassed with ground teams. This is really the new type of warfare in our communities. Wouldn't you say so?
Yeah, these were Julian McKinney, a former military officer, brought to light quite some time ago in a radio disclosure the fact of the stalking apocalypse that they were planning. And what this is they're able to, the military calls it hive minding. They actually link brain.
That's hive. For everyone that is having a hard time maybe hearing that word, it's hive, like a beehive. So could you give a definition to that? Because I think this is extremely important. I will tell you that when we went to Bluffdale, Utah, recently to actually march against and create the visual that NSA is part of the quantum computing system, we saw in the streets and embedded in concrete all over Salt Lake City these beehives. So can you talk about what hive mind means?
Well, hive minding would be, it was military communication systems developed and put in place for times of war where the soldiers would be remote neuro interfaced with, they can actually pick up on a neuron level and control on a neuron level a human brain and as well as an animal brain. As we know Dr. Dungan's book Soul Catcher and his ability in research to control a whale and a dolphin over 35 years ago, bringing a depth charge or whatever close to a sub. It could be detonated in the belly of a whale and bring down a Chinese or Russian sub. They had three-dimensional control of a whale over 35 years ago. And Dr. Duncan has a book called Soul Catcher. You can read this book. He disclosed a lot of his research and what his findings were. Now, a whale is a very intelligent creature. It has a larger brain than us. Most people don't realize they're under influence. They believe it's their free will, that they're picking up this brand of bread, this brand of flour. They're purchasing these type of products based on their own free will, which in fact they have fallen over the 50% controlled mark, meaning they have eaten so many chemicals and then the energy is turned on, that their nervous system is able to be hijacked. And we discussed this on other radio shows.
Yes, in fact, I will add to that right now for those that are listening a couple of notes about Robert Duncan. On StopTheCrime.net, under the Source Document tab, which you'll see at the top of the homepage, you can actually download his book called The Matrix Deciphered. And Robert Duncan also was on the Jesse Ventura program. He was one of the last ones interviewed on the Brain Invaders episode. And I can say to you that his research and research of many scientists and people that have invented these technologies, never knowing that they would be used against us, where their intellectual property was stolen. It could have been used for the good of mankind, but it's been used now for evil. And in his book, The Matrix Deciphered, he gives a global apology for the fact that his invented technologies now have been used against us. So with that, continue, please, Ron.
It's not just him that was working on this.
Yes.
The overseer of this group, and I'm going to explain the history of this. Out of Heidelberg, Germany, at the end of World War II, a group flew out, and they were codenamed the Aviary, because they were looking as to bird flight pattern migration and as to how birds were coordinated to follow each other. The Aviary ended up in Connecticut, where Prescott Bush was senator of Connecticut. Prescott Bush being the father of George Herbert Walker Bush, or actually, he's the adopted. George Bush was adopted. Now, the Aviary then formed what's called the Department of Defense Jason Brain Scientists. Those would be the paperclip scientists that were the brain experts, and then you had the paperclip scientists that worked on the Manhattan Project. They both went hand in hand. Always the brain scientists paired with the Manhattan Project scientists. That group then formed a so-called non-for-profit group called the Mitre Corporation out of McClellan, Virginia, MITRE Corporation.
MITRE.
Well, Mitre, it's pronounced Mitre.
Okay.
I
know that many people hear it as MITRE, but yes, Mitre. Go ahead.
Schlesinger was on the board of directors of the Mitre Corporation. Also, there's a lot of financial corporations paired with former DOD. Oh, Schlesinger was also formerly a DOD scientist and worker. And what I'd like to say is the Mitre Corporation, I stumbled upon this. The Mitre Corporation funds all 60 universities that have done work in this topic, from UC Santa Barbara to the virtual sexual reality program funded by the Mitre Corporation to other aspects. They got
now, Ron, I understand that the Carnegie Mellon Institute has one of the largest robot programs in the United States, and they have had this program since the 1970s, where they've received tremendous funding on literally remote replacements of human beings.
Well, it gets into the fact that these people want to live forever.
Yes.
And it's a little bit horrific. Dr. White in the United Kingdom has been doing brain transplants and head transplants for quite some time. With stem cells, horrifically enough, they may be able to get these things. They may actually, horrifically enough, be able to get these things to take. As these evil people die, they may choose to actually literally, it's invasion of the body snatchers, but until then, They may be in vats of liquid oxygen, because the brain doesn't need anything but oxygen. And they may have been doing these experiments for quite some time. And if you look at a very old film from 1933, Russia did a YouTube video called The Revival of Dead Animals. And I cannot watch that through, okay, because they're reviving dogs. What they did with dogs in 33 is well known. Humans, more than likely, have been doing this as well. And we all know, Disney cryogenically froze his body in Oakland, California, and his head was severed from the body, and he wanted the technology, when available, to revive him. It's a corporation, Disney. It's also melded with the Department of Defense in Hollywood. I don't want to get into it because it's too scary. But, if you don't believe me, you can do research on Dr. White and his brain transplants and head transplants. I've also seen rats' brains placed into vessels, and they're driving. The poor rat is driving around in a little electric car, not even knowing that it's just a brain in a vat. If you ever studied philosophy, what is a brain in a vat? Would a brain in a vat know it's alive? Would a disembodied brain know that it exists? Or would it be angry? So what I believe is some of these people with lots of money may choose a route of what they believe is life extension, which is really a form of hell on earth. They don't know they're gone.
Yeah, well, what is also concerning, and people can go to the link we have at the top of Stop the Crime. It's called No More Humans, and you can go to a website entitled The Year 2045 and get more information that you're hearing Ron speak about right now. But Ron, I wanted to just also go to a document that we've had posted on StopTheCrime.net.
Yes.
And we've talked about this NASA war document and what it says on page 31 of that document. It says, of particular concern, uncontrollable self-replication of brilliant robots, nanoreplicators. Now, we're going to get into that now on the other side of this network break. You're listening to Pure Momentum Network. This is Deborah Tavares, StopTheCrime.net, with my guest today, Ron Angell. And we're going to pick this up on the other side of this network break. Stay tuned.
Hello, everyone. This is Sophia Smallstorm inviting you to listen and share with me on Pure Momentum Network, my show called Speed of Light. We are way too bogged down by darkness, heavy energy, and a sense of futility. We need to move into literally a new kind of momentum. Knowledge is one way to do this, and with knowledge comes freedom from the oppressive state of knowing nothing, which some people think is actually bliss. In my journey, exploring so many subjects and expanding my awareness of all that's going on, I have met amazing, wonderful, fascinating people. These are the people, researchers, many of them, that I want you to meet. They have taught me how to really see, and we have exchanged those ways of seeing together. I think this is really about coming together, how we come together in knowing each other and giving our friendship and support. Pure Momentum is a very different opportunity for me. It's just an inner feeling I have, and I'd like you to be a part of it.
An amount necessary or sufficient to have a significant effect or to achieve a result. This is critical mass.
Greetings, fellow organic beings on planet Earth. My name is Pamela Tartar. I host Critical Mass on Pure Momentum Network. My awareness tells me humanity is reaching a tipping point. A choice must be made. Either we choose continuing under ever-worsening tyranny, or we stand up in our humanity and create a new world of love, abundance, compassion, empathy, and all the human attributes and features. I invite you to join me as we explore who we are and find tools inside us, enabling us to stand tall and strong against the opposition. Now is the time. Pamela Tartar, Critical Mass.
Welcome back, everyone. Again, this is Deborah Tavares on the Pure Momentum Network with my guest today, Ron Angell. And just prior to the break, we were talking about, of course, artificial intelligence, and we were linking it to the NASA war plan that we do have posted on stopthecrime.net at the top of the homepage. I would recommend everyone download it. In fact, at this point, for everything that is on stopthecrime.net is a free download. However, if you are unable to download for whatever reason, we do have a print shop that, for the cost of printing and shipping, can send you any document that you would like. And you can contact the print shop at area code 707-586-9558. Once again, that's area code 707-586-9558. Now, just prior to the break, Ron, we were going over one particular page, page 31 on the NASA warp document, and it says, of particular concern, uncontrolled, uncontrollable self-replication of brilliant robots, and in parentheses is IT, and then also nano replicators, nano. So now, could you discuss this with our listening audience?
Yes. What's taking place here is they've broken the blood-brain barrier with these nano crystals, self-replicating nanowires, and nano is in the metric is 10 to the negative 9 meters, which is diffraction grating scale. Diffraction grating would be like the hologram you see on a credit card, or just in general a hologram. 10 to the negative 9 meters. These structures are in the chemtrails. They're also in different applications, fungal. There's over 300 funguses in the chemtrails. And those funguses pass through into the plants, and you're actually taking them up into the plant roots, into your body. They're also in medication. They're also in the sugar, processed sugar. And so as you are ingesting these compounds, and for sure, anything, bread is just flour, yeast, eggs, water, sugar. That's it. You don't even have to have the eggs. You've got bread. When you look at a loaf of bread and you see 100 ingredients, put it down. Those are not to be ingested. They put prior much of this tech into the food. People ingested it over time. It built up in the fat cells. So even if you lost a lot of weight, you'd have to lose all of your fat to break down these compounds.
And that's including homogenized milk as well, with all the fortified vitamins and things that we see written on those labels. A very common purchase for most people in the supermarkets.
There's bovine growth hormone in the milk. On top of that, there's calcium with 2 extra electrons. Please have a look at the UC Berkeley paper, calcium ion signaling in the human immune system with EMF radiation.
That is embedded in the newly released YouTube that we just released today, and you can go on to YouTube and just type in, "Is AI now in charge?" That's artificial intelligence. That's what AI means. And in that YouTube, you will be able to look at the description of the YouTube and actually take a look and download that UC Berkeley research document, To Destroy Humanity is what it really is. And that was the document that you were just referring to right now, Ron, and I just wanted to let people know how they could get to that document.
Yes, and what I want to go into in detail is there's a particularly nasty individual from Colombia named Rodolfo Linas, Rodolfo Linas, Linas. Now, if you were to look for a YouTube called Rodolfo Linas, Wires in the Brain, you would see his disclosure about control of humanity, some being one way and some being two way. Now, I happened to actually look at some of his research papers after I was given this information by the head person in Europe for the targeted people that are experiencing the stalking, the directed energy, the burns. It's called thought projection, where you're getting an impulse to do something. And then there's the microwave hearing, which, by the way, is actually a patent for advertising sales, and they're using it in downtown Manhattan to project into the brain audible, sophisticated messages about buying things. These are subliminals that have risen through the sales. And, when I was young in middle school in Troy, Michigan, at Bowling Park Middle School, my teacher would show us, he was a World War II veteran, Mr. Losey, who was in the Battle of the Bulge. He would show us really great old movie strips about history. I learned most of my history in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. He showed the Disney shaving his head film strip and freezing his body. That was on film. That was not transferred to DVD or VHS or beta. That was only on film. He also showed us, horrific scenes of World War II. But he really keyed me into thinking different. And he always said, we have a Constitution. Don't forget that. And he made us learn the Constitution in and out. And later that man became State Senator Losey of the state of Michigan. I was fortunate enough, after he retired, as a teacher. But what we have going on here with this, these nanostructures in the brain, they're breaking the blood-brain barrier, and they're precipitating out almost two-way transistor radios in the fissures of the brain. So when you look at Rodolfo Linas, Wires in the Brain, keep in mind that man ended up at New York University and was an advisor to the NSA in this country from Bogota, Colombia.
Now, I want to inject something here because this information is presented to us in many different formats. And when I watched The Hunger Games, there was a lyric in there that struck me. And I actually later downloaded the lyrics so that I could read exactly what they were saying. But the lyric piece was entitled Rules, R-U-L-E-S. And they talked about, here's just a couple of lines of this, Ron, just to show everyone how they telegraph everything they do. And they just think we're too stupid to understand what is happening to us. But here are the first couple of lines. You say you know love, but you are just reflecting words you hear. No iron in your veins to give you any sense of pain or fear. It's just another lie. It's just another calculation. And when the power's out, we're just another old sensation. This blood keeps me alive, but what is it that runs through you? Electricity and wires dictating everything you do. So I would say that this is pretty apropos to the types of subliminal messaging that we as a population are getting through the evils presented to us called Hollywood. And I just wanted to interject that, Ron, to bring it down to a reality check for people that may need a breath with what they hear you saying.
Well, I will give you all the patents about the interface. You know, I have all the patent numbers and descriptions that you can then download these patents on how how it's interfacing with the brain. Then using a supercomputer, processing extremely rapidly. And what we're seeing is about 2 seconds upload to the satellites and 2 seconds download, in instantaneous processing. Speed very fast.
Explain to people what that means to them, because a 2-second upload to satellites and a 1 second download. Explain what that means. 2 second
upload. It would be from Earth. You see the infrared imaging satellite that was used to map the minerals on Mars. That satellite was also looking for life, not just, they know where all the minerals are on Mars, and they know where the water is, and they know the composition of Mars because of the satellite. And then around 2000, they put a satellite exactly like that and focused it on Earth. And sadly, Al Gore thought he was going to bridge the future, and he said that he announced it during the Clinton administration that they were going to put an exact replica and operating satellite that was sent around Mars around Earth. And I don't think he realized that they were going to do some other evil tech, and I think he was probably influenced to make that announcement. But what we have going on now are a bunch of satellites that are using brain patterns. We each give off a unique fingerprint. People think, oh, well, the RFID chip is the biggest threat to man. No, everything is known, its location, your identity, everybody and every creature, including insect, snake, bird, dog, cat, human, gives off a unique pattern. And this supercomputer is a massively sophisticated computer playing chess with everybody and everything. So sometimes, and they can control animals and insects and snakes and birds, just like they can control and influence our politicians. And if you ever are familiar with Kathy O'Brien and her disclosure, and her husband, Mark Phillips, have done incredible interviews over the years about how Kathy O'Brien was influenced in D.C. She was an incredibly beautiful woman. She was born in Michigan. She was used to compromise politicians in sexual favors.
So she was a sex slave. So for people that want more information, go to stopthecrime.net, click on the mind control link. We talk about the enslavement of humanity, the human trafficking, the sex slavery, the CIA finders that scoop up our children out of our neighborhoods and use them for ritualistic, satanic, horrific murders, as well as bringing them into sex enslavement as well. But I just wanted to go back quickly here because you'd mentioned Al Gore, and I wanted to just let everyone know he recently wrote a book entitled The Future. And inside the jacket of that book, he writes this: the worldwide digital communications, internet, and computer revolutions have led to the emergence of the global mind, which links the thoughts and feelings of billions of people and connects intelligent machines, robots, ubiquitous sensors, databases, The balance of global political, economic, and military power is shifting more profoundly than at any time in the last 500 years, from a U.S.-centered system to one with multiple emerging centers of power, from nation-states to private actors, and from political systems to markets. A deeply flawed economic compass is leading us to unsustainable growth in consumption, pollution flows, and depletion of the planet's strategic resources of topsoil, fresh water, and living species. Now, before I go on with what he's telling you right now, which is a complete scientific and political fraud to build up massive corporate profits, which is what he is behind, Al Gore, is to read the report from Iron Mountain that came out in the 60s, actually 1966. And it talks about the creation of corporate structures polluting the planet intentionally in many, many ways, identifying it as global warming. This is an economic coup against the world. This whole notion of global warming and our need to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions is a complete fraud.
Let me explain.
So,
Al Gore,
go ahead.
Al Gore came out with a disclosure during the Clinton administration that was incredibly correct. You may have been in LA at the time or not, during the time of the smog. When you had smog, their solution was the catalytic converter. The catalytic converter converted what you see as smog to nitrous oxide. The nitrous oxide was 300 times more powerful a greenhouse gas than the carbon dioxide and carbon monoxide. Further, if you look back into Tesla's publications, Nikola Tesla was a genius. He knew these brain frequencies in the 1900s. He also knew he could create earthquakes, destroy bridges, destroy planets. He also knew he could change the distance the Earth and the Moon were from the Sun. He put in his paper, in whatever paper it was, it may not be around anymore. Let's just say, for instance, the New York Times, one of the papers. There were other papers in New York. He advertised in the section, looking for an investor, can melt the polar ice caps and, create free unlimited energy. He knew that he could change the distance relatively simply. And I believe he had some takers. I believe he had Rogenfelds, who were the Rockefellers. That was their original name in this country. And then the Rothschilds. Okay. And I believe that those technologies, let's take, for instance, the Apollo missions. We had very cold winters when I was growing up. In 71, 72, it was sub-zero, 10 feet of snow every winter in Michigan. And then all of a sudden, warming. We landed on the moon, and according to Dr. Lynn Segala, when they landed on the moon is very, very fragile. The moon is still ringing from a bell from that Apollo. Now, it perhaps changed our orbital distance. And if you look, Al Gore said he wanted to measure the distance very accurately between the moon and Earth. And I'm not sure, I think he's under the same thing that I'm speaking of. And the distance from the moon, from the Earth and moon to the sun. These are normal cyclical changes. Look at the craters in the moon. Any time an object would hit the moon, it would be directly proportional to our changes on this planet. Randomly changing more than likely, possibly, the extinction of the dinosaurs occurred from an object hitting the moon. Now, to prove that, it's very difficult, right? You've got to find the crater, the angle of incidence of that crater, almost nearly impossible for a human to do it. A supercomputer might be able to figure it out. But my guess is we have changes and have had changes. We know this from results. You know, we've seen oceans in Salt Lake. The Central Valley of California was a sea. It was part of the bay at one time, okay? We have had cyclical changes. It's just as of recent that man is able to alter these through incredible technologies, HARP technologies. If you listen to Bernard Eastman and their disclosure of what they can do and how they can affect the ionosphere, you can't say Al Gore was necessarily wrong. Now, there was a NASA, it was called the Lacrosse moon bomb in 2009. It took off from Cape Canaveral. They placed a nuclear bomb on the dark side of the moon to blow a 5-mile crater on the dark side of the moon, and this is all on NASA's website. At which point it was detonated, and here in Florida we had about 2 weeks of 20-degree days. We lost a lot of trees in South Florida. I do believe at that point we no longer are in a system of global warming. They were never going to admit it, but now we're going into another cycle. They're playing around with the weather, okay? Now it's possible that they need to chemtrail to keep us warmer, because now it's too cold. People aren't used to having the winters and having all the lakes, Great Lakes freeze. It's been a long time since all of I think it was which lake froze? It was Lake Erie, Lake Superior. I mean, Lake Michigan almost froze this year. It's been since the 1800s or 1900s that's happened. We're in a different cycle. We are now in a situation where they can, through the supercomputer, plan changes. Prior to the Lacrosse moon bomb, they were chemtrailing to cool the planet. The supercomputer's playing. It's been programmed to do this. Its creators are probably dead. The scientists that made it would be very much up in arms that the biosphere is under assault. Fish, birds dying. You know, the supercomputer, like I said, doesn't need food. The artificial intelligence doesn't need oxygen. Whether or not there's human brains interface with this thing, we can only suppose and pray not, but it's very possible. We're not quite sure. Keep in mind, there are craters on the moon. Keep in mind, we had dinosaurs. We had drastic changes. There were other theories that we had an asteroid hit the Yucatan Peninsula and that circular thing, and in the Olmec region, the ancient civilization of the Olmec peoples in South America, there was a crater or an asteroid that hit there, and that we're not sure what it was, but a very, very drastic, catastrophic event drastically changed the Earth's environment.
Ron, I want to add in another paragraph that Al Gore told us in his book entitled The Future. And he said there has been a radical disruption of the relationship between human beings and the Earth's ecosystems, along with the beginning of a revolutionary transformation of energy systems, agriculture, transportation, and construction worldwide. And and he goes on that there's a life sciences revolutions are radically transforming the fields of medicine, again, agriculture, molecular science, and are putting control of evolution into human hands.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true. They're able to change DNA on the fly. They're able to change DNA within current structures. Remember the aging gene in the Human Genome Project. The aging gene was isolated sometime in the 90s during the Clinton administration. I remember sitting down and thinking, oh my gosh, it won't be long that they're able to actually flip that gene. And they did in I believe, South Korea, or North Korea, was able to flip it the other way. Okay, so we've got some for some people, they're getting younger. For some people, are going to see, and these are scary technologies, but this was all funded by the human genome, and more than likely the Dimitri Corporation that I spoke of earlier. And all good science can be used for bad. And in fact,
that's true. That's true. And I wanted to bring back to what you'd said a little earlier about the subliminal programming in Manhattan and how they're using programming as a suggestive consumerism. In other words, to shift our buying habits and patterns and to make more of a consumer-controlled aspect of how we select things when we go shopping. But I also wanted to point out that on StopTheCrime.net, we do have a document entitled the Aquarius document. It's the Aquarius group. And what I'm concerned, Ron, and what this document talks about is that, of course, the Aquarius group was working on mind control and the planned chemical sedation of the population and how radio microwave frequencies would allow for mass mind control. And what I think we're really going to experience here in the United States and globally is the ability for people to become assassins within high population density zones, is what the Aquarius Operations document talks about, and how they will be used to continue the annual extended national state of emergency with the war on terror. They're going to constantly tell us we have terror. So how would you address that? I'm sorry?
You've now come across as to how John F. Kennedy was assassinated and how they were able to get the Secret Service to step down from the back of the limo and put their arms out looking rather helpless, okay?
Now we're talking about the JFK assassination.
Yes, I have a book. Where's the book? It's by Lincoln Lawrence. It's right here on my shelf. It's called Were We Controlled? And I have a PDF copy of that book as well. It's no longer in the Library of Congress. But now, basically pages 26. Sorry, my headset's off. On pages 26 through 32, it talks about tools of the trade: radiohypnotic intercerebral control, RHIC, and EDOM, electronic dissolution of memory. Now, these operations are a direct extension of the paperclip scientists brought over after World War II, the Dimitri Corporation, and I'll tell it like it is. Joseph Mengele.
Now, what I'm going to ask you to do, because we are coming on the top of the hour, yes, and I would like to carry this on into our second hour, the members subscriber section of Pure Momentum Network, and just ask everyone to subscribe to hear in detail what Ron is just getting ready to discuss, with how electromagnetic frequencies being used to literally create our thoughts and our actions. And this is an extremely important conversation. Again, we would certainly suggest that everyone listening become a subscriber of the Pure Momentum Network. This is Deborah Tavares with StopTheCrime.net, and I am interviewing Ron Angell today. And we also want to, again, encourage everyone to listen to our newly released YouTube, and it is entitled, Is AI Now in Charge? And that's AI, of course, stands for Artificial Intelligence. I want to thank everyone for listening to this hour of the Pure Momentum Network, and I look forward to picking this conversation up in greater detail in the members subscriber section of the Pure Momentum Network. Thank you all for listening, and please subscribe.
We invite all our listeners to join us in the members section for the second hour of all our shows. We encourage you to click on the subscribe button, choose a membership type, pay with PayPal, and voila, you're a member. Enjoy all Pure Momentum Network material, the second hour of all talk shows, extra interviews, and